Most people assume they know themselves pretty well. You know your name, your job, your preferences. You know what you like to eat, what makes you laugh, what you think you believe. But here's the thing, there's a difference between knowing the surface of yourself and actually understanding what's happening underneath. And for most people, those two things are not the same. Psychologists have studied this gap for decades. They call it the introspection illusion, the tendency for people to feel confident about their self-knowledge, even when that self-knowledge is consistently inaccurate. Research shows that humans are surprisingly poor judges of their own motivations, emotional patterns, and behavioral tendencies. Not because they're unintelligent, but because most of what drives human behavior operates below the level of conscious awareness. You can think you know why you do something and still be completely wrong. The people who tend to know themselves most accurately are not the ones who've thought about themselves the most. They're the ones who've been willing to be honest about what they find when they look. That's the difference. Not effort, not intelligence, honesty. So this is your invitation to find out where you actually stand. This quiz isn't here to judge you. It's not here to tell you something is wrong with you. It exists for one reason only: to give you a clearer, more honest picture of yourself than you might already have. There are 15 questions. Read each one carefully. Answer based on what is actually true, not what you wish were true, not what you think sounds good. What's true? If a question makes you uncomfortable, that discomfort is information. Sit with it. The most revealing answers usually live just behind the ones that feel slightly too honest to admit. And if you find this kind of psychological insight useful, make sure you subscribe. We go deep into human behavior and the patterns most people never notice in themselves. Okay, let's begin. Question 1. When you're in conflict with someone you care about, what do you most often do? 1. I say what I feel, clearly, and try to resolve it. 2. I try to stay calm and see both sides. 3. I pull back and wait for things to settle on their own. 4. I say I'm fine when I'm not. 5. I replay the situation in my head for days without ever fully addressing it. Question 2. When something goes wrong in your life, what is your first instinct? 1. I look at what I can control and work on that. 2. I feel frustrated, but eventually problem solve. 3. I wonder what I did wrong. 4. I look for reasons it wasn't my fault. 5. I feel overwhelmed and don't know where to start. Question 3. How do you feel when someone around you succeeds at something you also want? 1. Genuinely happy for them. 2. Happy for them, but slightly aware of my own desire. 3. A little complicated, proud of them, but quietly uncomfortable. 4. Like I've been left behind. 5. Like something has been taken from me, even though I know that's not rational. Question 4. When you imagine your future, what do you mostly feel? 1. Excited and mostly hopeful. 2. Cautiously optimistic. 3. Uncertain, like I can't quite picture it. 4. Anxious. 5. Like the future is something happening to me, rather than something I'm building. Question 5. How often do you do things because you genuinely want to, versus because you're afraid of what happens if you don't? 1. Almost always from genuine desire. 2. Mostly genuine, occasionally fear-driven. 3. About 50-50. 4. I often do things to avoid discomfort, disapproval, or conflict. 5. I'm not sure I know the difference anymore. Question 6. When someone gives you a compliment, what happens inside you? 1. I receive it and feel good. 2. I appreciate it, but feel slightly awkward. 3. I immediately wonder if they really mean it. 4. I deflect or minimize it. 5. I feel a quiet discomfort, like I don't quite believe it or deserve it. Question 7. How do you typically handle your own emotions when they feel intense? 1. I acknowledge them and let them move through me. Woo. I process them slowly, but eventually. 3. I distract myself until they pass. 4. I push them down and keep moving. Or 5. I'm often not sure what I'm feeling until much later. Question 8. In your closest relationships, which is most true? 1. I feel safe being fully myself. 2. I'm mostly open, but there are things I keep back. 3. I show a version of myself, but not the whole picture. 4. I often feel like people would pull away if they really knew me. 5. Closeness sometimes feels more threatening than comforting. Question 9. How honest are you with yourself about your flaws? 1. Very. I can name them clearly without shame. 2. Fairly honest, though I have blind spots. 3. I acknowledge them in theory, but don't always sit with them. 4. I know they're there, but I avoid looking directly at them. 5. Thinking too hard about my flaws tends to spiral. Question 10. When you make a decision, how much do other people's opinions factor in? 1. I consider them, but ultimately trust myself. 2. I weigh them, but I make my own call. 3. I often need validation before I feel sure. 4. I find it hard to commit to something if people I care about disapprove. Or 5. Other people's opinions often determine what I do more than my own. Question 11. How do you relate to silence and being alone? 1. I genuinely enjoy it. 2. I like it in doses. 3. I tolerate it, but often look for something to fill it. 4. I get uncomfortable if it lasts too long. 5. Being alone with my thoughts for extended periods feels genuinely difficult. Question 12. How do you feel about where your life is right now compared to where you thought it would be? 1. Roughly where I hoped, or better. 2. Different from what I imagined, but I'm okay with it. 3. Behind, where I thought I'd be, though I try not to dwell. 4. Like I've taken some wrong turns. 5. Like, there's a version of my life I was supposed to be living that I somehow missed. Question 13. When you feel hurt by someone, what do you do with that hurt? 1. I express it honestly when the moment is right. 2. I process it, then bring it up if needed. 3. I tend to let it go without saying anything. 4. I quietly distance myself. 5. I keep it inside, but it stays with me. Question 14. How clear are you on what you actually value versus what you've been taught to value? 1. Very clear. I've examined this and know the difference. 2. Mostly clear, though some things blur together. 3. I'm still figuring it out. 4. I think a lot of what I value is inherited rather than chosen. 5. I'm not sure I've ever really separated the two. Question 15. If you're honest, how well do you actually know yourself? 1. Very well. I've done the work. 2. Fairly well, with room to grow. 3. I know the surface well, but not much deeper. 4. Less well than I usually admit. 5. I'm starting to think I may be more of a mystery to myself than I ever realized. Okay, now add up your scores. 1 point for each 1 answer, 2 for each 2, and so on up to 5. 15 questions, total. Scoring, 15 to 24 points. You have strong self-awareness. You demonstrate a clear, grounded relationship with yourself. You tend to act from genuine values rather than fear or external pressure. You can sit with difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them. And you're honest enough with yourself to see your flaws without letting them define you. This doesn't mean you've figured everything out. It means you've built the internal foundation that makes real growth possible. Continue doing the honest work. Protect the clarity you've built. 25 to 39 points. You're self-aware, but selectively. You have real insight into yourself in some areas, but there are corners you don't look into very often. Maybe you understand your emotions well, but avoid examining your motivations. Maybe you know your values in theory, but let other people's approval quietly override them in practice. This is the most common category, and it's not a problem, it's just where growth lives. The areas where you feel the most resistance are usually the areas with the most to offer. 40 to 54 points. You're operating mostly on autopilot. You function well on the outside, but internally, there's a distance between who you appear to be and what's actually happening. You may find that you don't fully understand your own reactions, that you drift toward what's expected rather than what's true, or that certain feelings arrive after the moment has already passed. This isn't a flaw, it's often the result of years of learning to prioritize other people's comfort over your own internal experience. Becoming more conscious of your patterns is the first and most important step. 55 to 75 points. There's a significant gap between you and yourself. You've likely spent a long time managing your external life very competently, while keeping your internal world at arm's length. You may find it hard to identify what you feel, hard to know what you want when no one else is influencing the answer, or hard to sit quietly with yourself without discomfort. That distance didn't appear overnight, and closing it won't either, but it's possible. Therapy, honest journaling, and conversations with people who are safe enough to be real with these are not luxuries. For someone in this category, they are some of the most important investments you can make. Self-knowledge is not a personality trait you either have or you don't. It's a practice. And like any practice, it deepens every time you choose honesty over comfort. The fact that you took this quiz, that you answered honestly, that you sat with questions that may have been uncomfortable, that already says something about who you are. Most people go their entire lives without pausing to ask themselves these questions at all. You chose differently today. If any part of this resonated, leave your score in the comments or share one thing that surprised you about your answers. And if you want to keep going deeper into the psychology of who you are and why you do what you do, subscribe to this channel. We release new videos every week, and this is exactly the kind of work we're here to do together. Hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.